So here's a question, and it's just a question. So, because whichever one you pick is ultimately the better one. You having the extra responsibility, it's kind of cool and it's kind of nice and everything. But I have also seen it bite people in the ass before. Do you ever feel like you're in over your head with a certain dog or a group of dogs or a client?
Well, yeah, definitely. I more feel like I'm not doing the client justice. Like
Okay.
with the size of their investment, and even little things like the other trainer saying like, oh, the Martingale's not good, let's move up to the good dog.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, I don't know. Did we spend enough time teaching leash pressure? Does the dog really understand what the collar means? Little things like that where there's a lot of like question marks that pop in my head.
Would you do me a quick favor? I just want to role play with you for one quick second. So if I were a client and you were explaining to me the process of training a dog, just give me your quick synopsis of how you would explain to someone else how a dog learns.
Yeah, I would say something along the lines of like, we're going to use verbal markers,
Okay.
and the dog will develop a good association with these markers. And as we teach different actions, we're going to use those markers to affirm that they're doing the right thing.
Okay.
And then the other aspect, why we need the collar, is to kind of basically be able to say no, and teach cause and effect. So if I want the dog to sit, using the collar to pull up, reminding the dog that once it sits, I'll let go of the pressure.
Okay.
Using these different things to communicate and shape the behavior so that the dog understands clearly what I'm asking is basically the process.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm going to just comment on that a little bit.
Yeah.
If I can,
please
because so a lot of times we explain how we're going to do it, not what we're going to do. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, it could be bad. It could be looked at the other way, but like, generally speaking, like one thing I was taught as a trainer is as soon as we go into methods or tools or things like that, like it is important to be open with the variety of things you might do and use with your dogs, but sometimes it's easier for people to understand general processes. Like first we're going to teach your dog stuff, right? We're going to teach your dog, sits and downs and stays and come, drop it, leave it, off, no, quiet. We're going to teach them concepts with low level distraction. Then we're going to gradually build up that distraction, right? So that the dog wins more and more and more. So that way we can make the process as positive as possible. Because if I throw your dog, with a very heavy distraction, and then all of a sudden the dog is failing 10 times in a row, well, that means the distraction's too high. So I want to gradually build up the dog's tolerance and impulse control and self-control and all of those things, right? Once the dog has his focus and the self-control that's necessary, now what we're going to start doing is we're going to start putting the dog in real life situations to make right versus wrong decisions. Right. So now that he knows what to do, is he going to do it in real time? Is he going to do it when there's another dog? Is he going to do it when I'm bouncing the tennis ball? Right. And so part of our job as a trainer is the same way, a coach's job is to make sure the athlete knows how to play in the stress of a game.
Right. When the pressure's on.
When the pressure's on. Right. And so we have a general process, right? We have a general process, and that process seems very commonsensical, and it seems very normal, and it seems very digestible, and it seems like they understand, right? And then when we start getting into markers and stuff like that, those are definitely how we would speak to each other as trainers. You know what I mean? From trainer to trainer, we would speak that way. But the clients, even though clients are intelligent, sometimes we lose them when we start talking with the jargon and we start talking with the tools and the timing and all that other stuff. And so if we can explain the process of what we're going to be doing in a way that's very palatable to them, then we're going to see something happen that's very beautiful. We're going to see them actually connect with what it is that we do and our passion. Because if we're talking like a robot, they're not going to connect to our passion.
You
get what I'm saying? So if we can connect to their passion, how much they love their dog, and we can talk about how much we love their dog too, through telling them how we're going to make this experience fun. We're going to make this experience. It's going to be difficult. You can be straight up. It's going to be hard for them if your dog doesn't know how to do certain thing. But my job is to guide your dogs
through the process
until they learn and understand, and they actually accept and are happy about it. Right. And so that's the general process of training. So that would be my only recommendation when talking to clients.
Put on the first time.
But yeah, I know when you're put on the spot, but just put it just to give you a little 2 cents.
I love constructive criticism. Like
I was asking because like what we're talking like the general meet and greet with the client, and that makes total sense. You don't want to just kind of lose them with bullshit. And sometimes too, I've seen in like before in videos and stuff where the trainer or whatever, like a different field, like I'm looking up a video on how to tighten my motorcycle's chain or something, and people are just they're too buzzwordy with it, and it's almost like annoying. It's like, we get it, bro, you're smart, and you just want to click off to something else. It pays to be personable and normal, and like, we get it, this person's not a dog trainer, that's why you have a job, and so on. I was asking about, I wanted to hear your explanation of how a dog learns, because in my mind, I'm looking at it more from the perspective of like, okay, so you've talked to the client and they've decided to do some lessons with you. Now you kind of have to teach them at least basic understandings of how the dog's going to learn, because they're the ones doing the homework. So, in that respect, I do like that you bring up markers, because one thing that I tell clients that it tends to be one of those things where like, once I say it to them, they're like, oh yeah, that helps a lot, I tell them like, you consider yourself a sort of clicker. I'll ask them as a joke, like, you guys ever, you guys have seen clicker training, right? Look, food, and they've seen it enough, like it's around wherever enough, Facebook and YouTube and all that stuff, to where they're like, yeah, the dog sits and you click the thing and you give him food. And one thing I started doing lately was I ask them questions back, and I'm like, okay, here's a question for you. Why do they click? Why then? And they're like, oh, because once the dog hears the click, then they understand that that's what they're getting rewarded for. So they know the process, at least that very simple concept, most people know, even if they don't think they do. Right. And I explained to them, you're absolutely right about that. The only difference is there's nothing magical about that sound. There's nothing special about a clicker sound. It's just sharp and it's easy to do. By sharp, I mean, it's not like a soft sound, like, that could be misplaced somewhere. It's very like on point. Right. So yeah, I explained to them, I need you to be a clicker. You don't have to click your mouth, but you're going to be marking things and you're going to be reinforcing these markers based on what you want. So if I were to ask a dog, sit, that's my verbal marker. This is my reinforcer right here. And once the dog does what I want, I'm going to mark that right there. Good. And then my reinforcer is right there. Good boy. Here's the food, or, or whatever the case. And so and that's it. I don't go too in depth with it, but I just break down marker, reinforcer. And the reason why it really helps me is because I tell owners straight from the jump, depending on what we're doing, like I just got a call this evening for a Wyoming that's going to do e-collar work. And so I explained to them, like, listen, even as we go through the phases of training and the tools change from food to leash to e-collar, the method stays the same. It's still marker, reinforcer, sit, good. You know what I mean? So it helps them kind of learn to digest it nice and early. That's the kind of thing that I would just have you keep in mind with them. Like, keep it simple. And it even feels more simple when you're like there with the dog. Like if I'm showing them with the actual dog learning how to sit and everything, it just kind of helps them click. And I can see them like, oh, then they get it. Because my big thing with these clients is they listen and they work hard and everything, but sometimes they just get stuck. Like, 2, 3, 4 days later, they're doing the homework that you told them to do. And somehow they slowly veered off course. And by the time you see them next week, they're doing it like, so I try a place to where they troubleshoot themselves, and they'll text me like, hey, XYZ is happening. Molly doesn't want to go down for food. What should I do? And then I have a kind of a set of words that I can just kind of lean to and make it fast. Mark with down, reinforce by bringing the food to the ground, mark with good, release with whatever the release is, break, reward,
and speak the same language now.
Right. So you got to build that language. So that's what I was getting at, was in the initial meet and greet, definitely don't be too overloady with, with the words and all the processes and everything else. Yeah. But once they need to know it, it really pays. And I noticed like, it's kind of weird how many dog trainers, I mean, they all know this process. You know how to train a dog. They just don't necessarily know how to break it down nice and simple for a client.
Right. I want to go back to your original proposed question, right? Mm-hmm. Which was, should I go and work under someone, a mentor, or should I stay at a place that gives me more freedom and room to grow, but they don't necessarily have any trainer influence? Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Right. So you guys ultimately, did she hire the person? I don't know if it's he or she, but did the owner of this company hire the person from the Monks of New Skeet to come train the team up, or like you do like a workshop or an enrichment or something?
Yeah.
Left. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like a special guest came trying to get you guys on the same page.
Right.
And then he left, and then kind of just left it for you guys to kind of keep going and figuring stuff
out.
Okay. What would you say the biggest incongruency is across the board from all the trainers?
Well, even like only one of us really teaches with the e-collar.
Okay.
And then I think I'm very good at, or not very good, but that's, I try to let the dog make the mistakes and just keep trying. Whereas I think the other two are very quick to just yank the chain.
And catch the dog.
Yeah.
Trigger happy a little bit.
Yeah, trigger happy. And it's hard because we get dogs from like all 8 years old, 4 months. So, I like to start in the beginning and at least make sure they know the behaviors. So it's a lot. It's all over the place. It's hard to pinpoint, but I guess the biggest one is that only one of us really feels comfortable using e-collar.
Got it. And who is that?
That's the trainer that was there longest. He was there 5 months.
And is the curriculum an e-collar training system specifically, or do you guys do training collars as well?
Yeah,
so like you'll send dogs home on a training collar, not just an e-collar.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Only some dogs go home with e-collars.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how proficient do you guys feel on your leash training itself?
Yeah. For myself, I definitely feel it's coming along.
Okay.
I think it was in the latest episode, the e-collar versus prong collar. Yeah. And I think there was a point where one of you was saying like, the timing is very different versus like an e-collar. And I think I have like you said, you could feel it, the weight, so I feel like our leash work is getting a lot better. But we're lacking, food work and e-collar work and moving through phases.
How much time do you guys have to train these dogs?
Each dog gets 3 sessions a day. Each session is about 15 to 30 minutes.
And how long?
How long do you have?
Is it a day training?
Sorry. We have different programs. Like I got an American Bulldog we worked with for 4 days. And then we have 7, 14, 21, and 28.
What's the expectation on each tier?
So like, for example, the 21 day we're working with right now, English Bulldog, his 3 goals are leash manners, no jumping, and polite greetings. And that's it.
Okay.
And like we only teach 4 commands. We teach sit down, come, sit down, come, and maybe just 3, honestly.
Okay. And like walk next to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Something like
a soft heel.
A soft heel. Yeah. Let's go.
Okay. Let's go. Okay.
That's what it is. Yeah.
So leash manners.
Yeah.
So you can have as little as 7 days with a board and trained dog. So you can have as little as 21 sessions with this dog.
No, over the course of 28, right? You can have a 4-weeker. Right?
I meant as little as. So
we even have a 4-day.
Oh wow.
4-day program. Okay. What's the expectation on a 4-day?
For that Bulldog, all I told them was I'm gonna open the line of communication between you and your dog.
Okay.
And that was the expectation I laid. So when they came and picked up their dog, they were happy that he was just more patient, and that he understood, when I asked him to sit, waiting at the doors. So
is the 4-day program, that's it? Or are there lessons included after the dog goes home?
We have classes on Sunday, 1-hour class that's free forever. Phone and email support forever, but no like one-on-ones, no group classes. Just the one on Sunday, but anybody who ever's trained can go on. Do they go typically? It was hard right now with quarantine and COVID. Usually it's like just one person. Last week I worked with a lady that was a 7-day. And we worked with like reactivity. So I just brought out other dogs and tested his range and how she was handling him and stuff like that.
Okay. Is the owner of the company, they're not dog trainers, right?
No.
The dog training department was an afterthought. Originally, was it a daycare?
Yeah, I believe so. It's been around for a while, but I believe she just, she loved her dog and was inspired and started it up real early, and then was like, let me add this.
Yeah, and so there's a huge market in the dog training, right? And that's actually one of my goals over the next couple of years is to actually help smaller businesses have more successful training departments, right? And one of the interesting things is 4-day training packages, it sounds like it would be budgetable and like people can come and like, they can pay for it and like they'll be okay, but one of the big successful things or the things that dog trainers really need to fight for is to buy time and have a process and have people understand the process of training, right? Because there's so many people that can say something like, oh yeah, I got my dog trained at this one place and yeah, the dog's fine, like he's okay, yeah, sure, yeah, but that should never be my client, you know what I mean? That should never be my client. And so, I grew up in a training facility that was made by dog trainers. It was a board and train and it was a boarding and daycare and grooming facility designed by dog trainer. By a dog trainer.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So the dog training department we taught our staff, we taught the daycare staff, we taught the grooming staff, we taught, so we could take on really hard cases. And this is actually the company that me and Corey and Mariano grew up in LA, right? So we kind of saw this mesh of trainers had a little bit more influence in what was going on. So a lot of the methods, a lot of the programs, a lot of the things were really based on how we can improve the dog's behavior. Like we were one of the only daycares in Los Angeles that in 20 seconds, we can get all the dogs to lay down and stay. Like they all lay down immediately, so we're the only ones that could put a whole daycare of 20, 30 dogs in a downstay right away. Right now, because we were a training facility, it was probably like 60, 70% of the dogs in daycare were trained at some point. You know what I mean?
That's great. Yeah.
So it was really cool. So, anyways, I think it would be, again, I know you're not calling us to talk about like for your boss's business, but the 4-day trainings, we're not going to usually, it's not going to get people to respect dog training and the work that actually has to be put in. They're never really going to see a good result that they go, hey, that was worth the money. All right, cool. And even though they might be like polite and sweet and be like, hey, that was good. They're never going to be blown away. They're never going to be blown away. And that's one of the big things as a dog trainer. It's like, you need to buy yourself enough time to be effective.
Yeah. Right? Well, effective is a couple pronged thing, right? So the dog needs to learn what they need to learn, but also the process for the dog needs to be enjoyable and palatable, because I mean, we're talking 4 days, but here in my area here in Arizona, there's kennels that I can think of that we've talked about before that they guarantee that doesn't matter what age, there is no nuance to the program. It's a 2-week e-collar program, period. That's it. Puppies, older dogs, whatever. And I met with these people because I moved here less than 2 years ago. Like I said, I'm from LA. And I moved here, and before I got my client base going here, I went to kennels to see where I can work to hold myself over while I built my client base. And I met with these people, the owners of this company. It was like a guy and his wife. And they're just going over my credentials. Okay, so you know how to do this and this and this and this. And I was like, oh yeah, I know all about e-collar. I can train an e-collar dog amazing, and they're like, yeah, well here we don't really do food work. Like we don't really do this or that. We only have 2 weeks. So we just go straight to e-collar and just go, And I was like, yeah, but what if the dog's a young puppy? What if this, what if that? What if the dog's very food motivated? What if, whatever. And they're like, yeah, we don't, we just don't do that, time, money. And the dogs at the end of 2 weeks looked trained. They looked good, but man, they kind of went through hell in the process.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it doesn't bode well for retention, number one, of the dogs, the information of the training and the motivation to want to work. But also, these people are trusting you with their animals and they're paying you thousands of dollars. And, so kind of what Brent and I are getting at is it can seem nerve-wracking as like a newer trainer. I understand you don't own the company, but if the owner could kind of get on board with that, it's like, we get it. It's
pressure
cheaper
on you. It puts unnecessary pressure.
Yeah.
It puts pressure on you. It puts pressure on the dog.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, definitely.
And it's not fair, and a lot of times dogs can't deal with that kind of pressure. One of the more uncomfortable things a newer trainer has to go through for the first few times is call an owner of a dog and like, hey, you know what? Do you think I could have an extra week?
Right. Yeah.
But then you explain to them, like, I realize it's more money, more time, whatever their big issue, the big resilience is there. But it's like, listen, I have your dog right now at this point, and I really think if I had 7 more days, I could create or I can generate this sort of workflow that's going to be enjoyable and productive and long lasting and blah 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 blah, and kind of get them to understand, like, you could maybe teach children school in less than 12 years, but it's going to be a little too much for them to deal with while still enjoying their lives, because dog training, as you know, it's more than just obedience commands.
Right.
There's socialization, there's crate training, there's everything else, there's downtime, there's playtime, there's, so these dogs, especially if they're younger or already have their issues, they need to enjoy their time. I mean, naturally it's going to be somewhat stressful just because things are new and you're kind of pushing them to learn, but they need to understand that you're on the same side as them and that they trust you enough that they're going to accept you pushing them as opposed to just fighting you back all the way.
Yeah.